Let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and said, I am enough? Not for someone else, not for the world, but for you. See, too many of us are waiting for love to come from outside, a partner, a friend, society's approval. But here's the truth. Until you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you'll always settle for less than you deserve. And today, I'm going to show you how to stop begging for love and start becoming the source of it. You know why so many people feel empty, even when they're surrounded by others. It's because they're living on borrowed love. They're feeding off compliments, likes, approval, attention. And the moment that dries up, so does their confidence. Think about it. How many times have you felt amazing because someone texted you, noticed you, or praised you? And then the very next day, when that attention wasn't there, you felt invisible. That's not love. That's dependency. That's building your worth on sand, waiting for the tide of someone else's opinion to wash it away. And here's the truth. If your value comes from outside of you, then you'll always be chasing it. You'll change how you talk, how you dress, even what you dream about, just to keep people around. That's not self-love. That's survival. And survival is not where joy is found. We've been conditioned since childhood to look outside for validation. Gold stars in school, approval from parents, applause from friends. And as adults, it just shifts to followers, relationships, job titles. We're still chasing that same thing, someone else telling us we're good enough. But here's the reality that hits hard. Nobody else's opinion has ever defined your worth. It's just noise. Powerful noise, yes, but noise. The only voice that actually sets the tone for your life is the one inside your head. So if you want to learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you have to break this habit of seeking permission to feel worthy. You have to stop handing out the keys to your self-esteem. Because every time you wait for someone to validate you, you're basically saying, I don't trust myself to know my own value. And if you don't trust yourself, why would anyone else? Let me put it this way. Imagine you're holding a priceless diamond. You walk around asking people, hey, do you think this is valuable? Is this worth keeping? Do you think it shines? They might shrug. They might say yes. They might say no. But here's the thing, whether they recognize it or not doesn't change the fact that it's a diamond. Its value doesn't go up or down based on their opinion. And neither does yours. The moment you stop chasing external validation, you start creating internal stability. You stop panicking when someone doesn't call you back. You stop shrinking when someone doesn't notice your effort. Because your worth isn't up for debate anymore. You already know who you are. You already know you're enough. That kind of self-love doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you unshakable. Now, I'm not saying you won't care what people think. We all care. We're human. But there's a difference between caring and depending. Caring means you listen, you consider, but at the end of the day, your decision, your identity, your worth, they stay anchored in you. Depending means you let other people's opinions dictate your happiness. And that's a prison you don't belong in. So how do you actually start shifting this? By catching yourself in the act. The next time you notice that sinking feeling in your chest because someone didn't validate you, pause. Ask yourself, am I really upset because I'm not enough? Or am I upset because I wanted them to tell me I am? There's a huge difference. And when you see that difference, you start realizing how often you've been outsourcing your worth. Then flip it. Instead of waiting for someone to say it, you say it. Look in the mirror, tell yourself, I am valuable, I am worthy. I don't need permission to believe in me. It feels awkward at first, sure. But so did walking when you were a baby. So did driving when you first held the wheel. Awkwardness is just the feeling of something new becoming familiar. If you practice this long enough, you'll reach a point where people's approval feels nice, but not necessary, and that's freedom. That's when you finally start loving yourself more than anyone else. Because the day you stop needing others to validate you is the day you stop being afraid to lose them. The way you talk to yourself, is the loudest voice you'll ever hear. And for most people, that voice is brutal. You make one mistake, and suddenly your mind is calling you a failure. You get rejected once, and now you're telling yourself you're unlovable. You fall short of a goal, and you label yourself lazy, weak, not good enough. If you spoke to your friends the way you speak to yourself, you wouldn't have any friends left. But you allow it. You normalize it. And after years of hearing the same harsh words in your own head, you start to believe them as truth. But let's be real here. Those words are not facts. They're habits. They're echoes of old criticism, old comparisons, old fears you've carried around for too long. And the problem is, you've been rehearsing them every single day without even noticing. That inner dialogue is shaping your self-image, and your self-image is shaping how you show up in the world. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll settle for less. If you believe you're powerless, you won't take risks. If you believe you're not enough, you'll spend your life proving it instead of living it. The mind listens to repetition. That's why you've memorized your favorite song. That's why you can remember directions you've taken 100 times. And it's also why you can instantly recall the negative labels you've repeated to yourself for years. You've trained your brain to believe in your own limits. And here's the shift. If you can train your brain to believe lies, you can train it to believe truth. So what if, instead of letting that negative loop run wild, you started writing a new script? What if the voice in your head became the coach instead of the critic? Imagine if every time you failed, instead of saying, "I'm stupid," you said, "I'm learning." Every time you got rejected, instead of saying, "I'm not enough," you said, "I wasn't their choice, but I'm still valuable." Every time you fell behind, instead of saying, "I'll never get there," you said, "I'm not there yet." That one little word, "yet," has the power to completely reframe how you see yourself. And don't think this is about empty affirmations. This isn't about standing in the mirror and lying to yourself with a fake smile. This is about consciously choosing language that builds instead of breaks. You don't have to say, "I'm perfect." You don't have to say, "I've got it all figured out." You just have to start speaking to yourself with the same compassion you'd offer to someone you love. Because if you wouldn't tell your best friend you're worthless, why do you say it to yourself? Here's the kicker: the words you use on yourself set the ceiling for your potential. If you keep telling yourself you're small, you'll never grow big. If you keep telling yourself you can't, you won't. But if you start feeding your mind words of resilience, of growth, of possibility, you'll start walking in them. Language creates belief, and belief drives behavior. So the challenge is simple, but not easy. Catch your inner critic in the act. The next time you hear that voice tear you down, stop and ask, would I say this to someone I care about? If the answer is no, then it has no business being said to you either. Replace it, redirect it, rewrite it. It might feel forced at first, but over time, those new words become your default. They become the soundtrack of your life. And the day you change your inner dialogue, you change the way you carry yourself. You change what you tolerate, what you pursue, and what you believe is possible. Because when your words shift from tearing you down to building you up, your life starts to rise to meet them. One of the clearest signs that you love yourself is how you protect your peace. And the way you protect your peace is through boundaries. But for so many of us, boundaries feel heavy. They feel selfish. They feel like we're pushing people away. We think saying no makes us cold or unkind or difficult. But let me tell you the truth. Saying no doesn't mean you don't care about someone. It means you care about yourself enough not to betray your own needs just to keep them comfortable. Think about how often you've said yes when you wanted to say no. You agreed to go out when you were exhausted. You took on a project you didn't have the capacity for. You let someone keep crossing a line that left you drained, frustrated, even resentful. Why? Because deep down you thought, if I say no, they won't like me. If I say no, they'll think I'm selfish. If I say no, I'll lose them. But here's the hard reality. You lose yourself a little more every time you abandon what you need for the sake of pleasing someone else. And slowly, piece by piece, you teach yourself that their comfort matters more than your worth. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting people out. Boundaries are doors. They're how you decide who gets access to your energy, your time, your love, and under what conditions. If you let everyone walk through that door whenever they want, they'll eventually track mud all over your peace. But if you decide who and when and how, that's not selfish. That's wise. That's love in action. And here's something we don't say enough. People who truly value you will respect your boundaries. They may not always understand them right away, but they'll adjust. The only people who get angry when you set a boundary are the ones who are benefiting from you having none. Think about that for a second. If someone gets offended because you said no, that's not a reflection of your selfishness. That's a reflection of their entitlement. It's not easy, though, because boundaries don't just challenge others. They challenge you. They force you to get clear about what you need. They force you to face the discomfort of disappointing someone in order to stay true to yourself. And for people pleasers, that's terrifying. But here's the freedom in it. Every time you choose your peace over their approval, you strengthen the love you have for yourself. You prove to yourself that you are worth protecting. So, how do you start? You start small. You say, I can't make it tonight. You say, I don't have the capacity for that right now. You say, that doesn't work for me. Notice something. None of those statements are attacks. None of them are cruel. They're honest. And honesty is one of the purest forms of love, both for others and for yourself. Over time, boundaries stop feeling like walls and start feeling like freedom. You realize you don't have to answer every call. You don't have to explain every choice. You don't have to bend until you break. And when you live that way, something powerful happens. You stop resenting people because you're no longer betraying yourself just to please them. Your relationships actually get healthier because they're built on truth, not silent sacrifice. The irony is this: the people who fear setting boundaries because they don't want to lose love usually discover the opposite. When you stand firm in your worth, the right people draw closer and the wrong people fall away. Either way, you win. Because saying no isn't rejection, it's self-respect. We live in a world that's always waiting to clap for the big moments. Graduations, promotions, weddings, achievements with lights and applause. But what about the quiet victories? What about the days when you got out of bed even though you didn't want to? What about the time you pushed through fear and spoke up when it would have been easier to stay silent? What about the discipline it took to say no to something that didn't serve you, even though it was tempting? Those are wins. They might not get posted on social media. They might not earn standing ovations. But they are proof that you're moving forward. And if you keep waiting for someone else to celebrate them, you'll never realize just how far you've come. See, loving yourself means you don't just survive the journey. You celebrate it. Too often we tell ourselves, it's not a big deal. I should be doing more. I'll celebrate when I finally get there. And with that mindset there, keeps moving. You land the job, but now it's about getting promoted. You lose 10 pounds, but now it's about losing 10 more. You earn some money, but now it's about hitting the next level. And in that cycle, you never pause to give yourself credit. You rob yourself of joy in the present because you're addicted to some version of more in the future. But here's the truth. Confidence is not built in giant leaps. It's built in small steps. Every time you celebrate a win, no matter how tiny, you're training your brain to see progress. And progress is what fuels motivation. Think about a child learning to walk. If they took one step and fell, and you ignored it, they'd stop trying. But when you cheer them on, when you clap for that one step, they light up. They try again, and again. And eventually they're running. You're no different. The child in you still craves that same encouragement. And it's not the world's job to give it to you. It's yours. So here's what it looks like. You finish a workout when you didn't feel like going. Celebrate it. You choose to walk away from a toxic conversation instead of engaging. Celebrate it. You finish reading a book instead of scrolling for 3 hours. Celebrate it. You kept a promise you made to yourself, even if no one noticed. That's worth celebrating. Because every time you recognize your own growth, you reinforce the belief that you are capable. And don't confuse celebration with arrogance. Celebration doesn't mean bragging. It doesn't mean shouting from rooftops. Sometimes it's just taking a deep breath and saying to yourself, I did that. I'm proud of me. Sometimes it's writing it down so you don't forget. Sometimes it's treating yourself with the same kindness you'd give to a friend. And that's really the heart of it. When you stop waiting for applause and start giving it to yourself, you finally take ownership of your journey. Here's the beautiful part. When you celebrate your wins, big or small, you stop comparing them to anyone else's. You realize it doesn't matter if someone else is further ahead because you're running your own race. You stop chasing milestones for validation and start enjoying the process for what it is, your growth. And the truth is, if you don't clap for yourself along the way, you'll get to the finish line and still feel empty. But if you learn to celebrate each step, you'll already be living the joy you thought was waiting at the end. Because confidence isn't built in the spotlight, it's built in the quiet moments when you choose to clap for yourself first. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to drain the love you have for yourself. And it's so sneaky because half the time you don't even realize you're doing it. You scroll through social media and suddenly you feel behind. You see someone your age achieving something big and instantly you question your own progress. You walk into a room and notice what others have that you don't. Looks, money, opportunities. And before you know it, your entire sense of worth is being measured against somebody else's highlight reel. But here's what comparison really does. It blinds you. It takes your eyes off your own growth and convinces you that your story only has value if it matches someone else's. And that's a lie. Because their journey is not your journey. Their timing is not your timing. And their success does not mean your failure. There is no shortage of greatness in this world. Just because someone else shines doesn't mean you don't. Think about it. You don't look at a sunset and get mad because the stars aren't out yet. You don't look at the ocean and compare it to the mountains. You accept that each has its own beauty, its own timing, its own purpose. But when it comes to ourselves, we forget that. We start believing there's only one version of success, only one path, only one way to be worthy. And in chasing that, we overlook the unique path we're meant to walk. The problem with comparison is that it always puts you in a race you didn't sign up for. And even when you think you're winning, you lose because the finish line keeps moving. There will always be someone with more money, more recognition, more experience. If your worth is tied to being ahead, then you'll never feel enough. But if your worth is tied to growth, your growth, then you'll never run out of reasons to be proud. So how do you shift it? You make the decision to measure yourself only against who you were yesterday. That's it. Did you learn something new today? Did you handle a situation better than the last time? Did you take a step, even a small one, toward becoming the person you want to be? That's progress. That's success. And when you stack those small wins day after day, you look back 1 year later and realize you've built something powerful, not because you beat someone else, but because you became more of yourself. And let's be honest, comparison steals joy in the present. While you're busy wishing you had what someone else does, you miss what's right in front of you. You miss the fact that someone else might be looking at your life, wishing they had what you have. You miss gratitude, and gratitude is where real love for yourself grows. You cannot fully love yourself if you're always wishing you were someone else. That doesn't mean you ignore inspiration. It's okay to admire people, to learn from them, to let their success spark ideas. But there's a difference between inspiration and imitation. Inspiration pushes you forward, imitation pulls you away from yourself. Use what you see in others as fuel, not as a reason to doubt your own worth. Because the truth is, when you stop comparing yourself to others, you finally free yourself to run your own race. And that's where real peace lies. Because the only person you ever need to be better than is who you were yesterday. Think for a moment about the way you treat the people you love most. When they make mistakes, you give them grace. When they're tired, you tell them to rest. When they're hurting, you reassure them that it's going to be okay. You encourage them, you support them, you remind them of their worth. Now compare that to the way you treat yourself. Do you extend that same compassion? Or are you quick to criticize, quick to punish, quick to call yourself names you'd never call anyone else? The way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others treat you. If you constantly neglect your needs, silence your voice, or talk down to yourself, you send the message that you don't believe you're worth much. And whether you realize it or not, other people will start to follow that lead. But when you decide to care for yourself the same way you care for the people you love, everything shifts. You stop waiting for someone else to nurture you because you've already given yourself that gift. Think of it like this: if you bought a beautiful car, you wouldn't skip oil changes, ignore warning lights, and expect it to run forever. You'd maintain it. You'd take care of it. Not because you're obsessed with the car, but because you recognize its value and you want it to last. Your body, your mind, your heart, those are your vehicles through life. Why do you think you can neglect them and still run smoothly? Loving yourself means investing in yourself. It means rest when you need it, food that fuels you, conversations that lift you, and space from things that drain you. And let's talk about the way you speak to yourself. If someone you loved was scared, you'd reassure them. If they failed, you'd remind them it's not the end. But when it's you call yourself weak. You convince yourself you're not enough. Why? Why give more patience to others than you give to yourself? You deserve the same kindness, the same forgiveness, the same encouragement. Treat yourself like someone you love, because you are someone you should love. That doesn't mean you don't hold yourself accountable. Love doesn't ignore growth, it demands it. But there's a difference between pushing yourself to improve and punishing yourself for not being perfect. One builds, the other breaks. If you love someone, you want to see them win. You don't destroy them for losing. Apply that same truth to yourself. It might feel strange at first, because most of us were never taught to treat ourselves with love. We were taught to give, to sacrifice, to pour into others even when we're empty. But here's the reality: you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you don't refill your cup by waiting for someone else to notice it's empty. You refill it by choosing yourself again and again. Start small. Take 5 minutes to breathe when you're overwhelmed. Speak to yourself with kindness in the mirror. Acknowledge your progress instead of only your flaws. Protect your peace the way you'd protect the peace of a loved one. Because the more you love yourself, the more love you actually have to give to others. At the end of the day, it's simple. If you wouldn't treat someone you love with criticism, neglect, and cruelty, then stop treating yourself that way. Because the greatest proof of self-love is learning to care for yourself the way you've always wished someone else would.